Hi there, my name is Toby, and today I want to talk about the real secret behind this ancient technology, these old world buildings. And we all know they're quite clever, elaborate buildings, seriously over-engineered. But there's a real reason why they did this, and I want to go into it today and explain this. Not many people know this. We all know that geometry is important, but what is it about the geometry that gives this its power, or what makes it so special? So before I go into it and talk about this Alexandra Palace here, I want to share with you a little clip that I discovered that confirms my theories. So before we go any further, let me cut to this clip.
Than what they found in these vases. These are ancient Egyptian vases made out of granite. Some engineers saw this and said, hey, those are too precise. So they measured them. They were too precise for mechanical measurements, so they laser scanned them. The laser scan wasn't precise enough, so then they CT scanned them with an X-ray. CT scans are micron precise. That is a human hair. CT scans get that precise. You can see that level of detail. Here's one of them. Green means that if it was going on an airplane, it would be considered perfect. If I gave you a pencil with a micron thin tip, a perfectly straight line would be green. You're off by 3 microns, that's yellow. These are designed using circles. The pattern is based on sacred geometry. It's called radial traversion. It just means that every curve on that vase is a harmonic ratio, like music. They tested the mathematically perfect pattern on a digitally designed vase. The difference between the perfect digital one and the Egyptian one was 9 microns. They then found out that the units they were working with were based on the speed of light. I'll let Ben explain this.
This is very interesting, as it means that the base unit seems to be a simple whole number subdivision of the speed of light in a vacuum.
All of this got a harsh reaction from the archaeological community for a very good reason. What they have to say they used based on that story is now proven false with data. Now, Flint uses these alabaster vases as an example. I literally just saw these at the Egyptian Museum. But those are not even close to as precise as this machined modern vase that they compared the Egyptian one to. They date these as pre-dynastic, so using only copper. But before they built the greatest monument of all time, they were able to produce hundreds of thousands of these at aircraft-grade precision. So saying that they resorted to slavery and just worked really hard makes them look worse, while saying they were more advanced immediately goes that direction. Just to make this clear, the Hindu, Egyptians, and the Mayans built their... No aliens, just these aliens, who told this story, took their stuff, in a time when horses were high-tech. Please go watch Ben's video for yourself. It's an hour and a half with all the evidence, and watch the counter-evidence from people like Flint. What those people left will speak for itself.
So you can see now this really relates to precision. The secret to the power of this building, or the energy of this building, is the precision of the geometry, the mathematics. It's got to be absolutely precise. And this here is Alexandra Palace, one of the most special buildings, I think, in London. It's on top of a hill. It's a massive building. It was an old palace. And it's been, destroyed and reconstructed many times over. So a lot of what you see here is not original anymore. But some of it is. If you look carefully at some of that sculpture at the top there, I believe, is still original. But there would have been sculptures all over the building. And all these old world buildings were covered in these sculptures, most of which are gone now. But again, it's an incredible feat of engineering. That big archway looks like solid stone. And these pillars, again, solid. So they would have had to carry this up the hill with a horse and cart and assemble this. And it seems quite remarkable how they would have done this with a horse and cart. You see, this is so precise. And again, now you understand that precision is important, which I'll talk about. How did they do this? How did they build this? What was the engineering? Well, this cannot be carved. It's so precise. All these pieces have to be cast. So these would have been cast in stone, powdered stone. So when they set, it becomes solid stone. And it's a lost art. I don't think we've got this art anymore, how to cast in stone so that it just becomes real stone. So then all these are pieces, and then they've got to be brought up the hill and pieced together with absolute accuracy. So that means the whole thing will have to be designed so cleverly so that you know all the pieces to make and how to bring it up the hill. And now you can see how high up this is. It's very high up on a hill. So it's a big deal to get these pieces up there. And some of those big arches look like 10, 20 tons. So it's a big deal to get them up the hill and put them in place. And don't forget the foundations. There's going to be massive foundations to these buildings going deep underground. How many tons or thousands or even maybe hundreds of thousands of tons of stone are in the foundations? So it's a big feat of engineering that is really a mystery. We know about the pyramids and we still have a mystery how they built that. Again, but I know how they built that. The pyramids were built with geopolymer. Now look at this little design here. This is the golden ratio. These circles, I believe, are in the proportion of the golden ratio. And that is the secret of the geometry. It's proportionality. Proportionality. And this proportionality of the golden ratio is also in the Great Pyramids. And some of these pieces to these buildings, the archways, the window frames, the pillars, look very much like ancient Egypt, ancient Greece. Very much connected to things like the pyramids, all similar stuff. And even these temples in India, Cambodia, all very similar in that they are perfect geometries, very elaborate, complex, perfect geometries, and they all have to be put together with perfection. You see, it's the minute details to the measurements that give it the power. And the measurements are not just measurements that they relate to things, like you saw in that little clip. The size of the pots was connected to the speed of light. In these buildings, the measurements will connect to real physical things, like the speed of light or the size of the earth, the distance between the earth and the sun. You'd have to do some research to find out all the measurements that are used. But even those measurements are not as important as the proportionalities. It's all about the proportionalities, the relative measurements. And you have to get those relative measurements as close to perfection as possible. Because once you achieve perfection, getting close to perfect geometries and perfect proportionalities, again in the golden ratio, and you can see that top triangle there looks like the golden angle, again a particular angle that connects to the golden ratio. So they're using all these geometries, but that is what gives it the power. That is what connects it to the ether, the relative proportionality. The relative proportionality. You see, there's three things going on here. There's electrostatics, and you can see the antenna there to collect the electrostatics, and you can see the different layers of stone and brick. And again, these different layers are to do with electrostatics. You can see layers are connected together in lines. They're like electrical circuits running through the building. But the red bricks are iron oxide, so they have a little bit more electrical effect compared to the other stone. So once you've got these layers of varying electrostatic materials, you create a big battery, an electrostatic generator. And lower beneath the building is very likely you would have piezoelectric rock like granite, and perhaps that's in the foundations. So when the weight of this building squashes down on piezoelectric rocks beneath with a slightly crystalline, then you also create an electrostatic charge that rises up through the building. So it's electrostatic to do with the height, the antenna, the aerial at the top, and to do with the piezoelectricity at the bottom, and to do with these varying different types of bricks. But it's also magnetic. Magnetism is to do with the shapes, the geometry. So when you see all these circles are to do with the magnetic field. Again, it's very hard to understand how this would connect to magnetism. It connects not directly, but indirectly. Magnetism is governed by geometry, different shapes, and again, indirectly, not directly. That's why modern science can't quite understand it. It's to do with the ether. The ether is pure geometry, metaphysics, not physics. It's consciousness itself. Again, very hard to understand this. But geometry, mathematics, exists in consciousness. It's an idea, it's a process that happens in consciousness. You can visualize geometry and you can write down the mathematical formulas for perfect geometry, but in reality, of course, it's never perfect. But if you can create geometry as perfect as possible, then it will connect to the ether. And these principles, it's the principle of proportionality, relativity. This is the real relativity, relative proportions. And the whole building will be constructed with these relative proportions. No one has really done the analysis on any of these buildings. We've still taken them for granted. We still think, oh, look at that fancy geometry. But no one has done the detailed analysis of it. And I mean, from the big scale, you've got to look at the overall plans, right down to the minute scale. And you will see the proportionality of the golden ratio on all these levels. And that is what gives it the power. That is the secret, relative proportionality. You will have alignment. This building will be aligned with magnetic north, and it's on the top of a hill, which probably is a ley line. Again, a ley line means telluric currents, electricity running under the earth. Again, it's a real thing, and you can see now how they reconstruct the building over and over. So it's very hard to tell now what is original and what is reconstruction. But it doesn't matter. You see, even if this is reconstructed several times over, if it was reconstructed again with the same knowledge, it will still have a certain amount of power. So I suspect this has been reconstructed through several generations, some of which still knew the secrets. But of course now we don't know the secrets, so we're just, piecing it together however we can with no real understanding of what we're doing. But even inside, look at the steelwork. Again, the steelwork might have come a bit later, I'm not sure. But even if the steelwork was original, it could well have been original because of the precision. Again, no one has measured the dimensions of these arches and the dimension of the square in the middle. It's a perfect square, and these are perfect arches. And again, the proportionality between the square in the middle and these arches around it is going to be exact. The measurements and the proportionality of the surface area and the volume is going to be exact. And here's a picture of what it used to look like. So there was a big dome in the middle which was destroyed. Again, they just say, oh, it burnt down in a fire. But all these buildings, they say, they're burnt down in a fire. But it cannot be. Most of these buildings are solid stone. And here we got stone and metal. And these things don't burn in a fire. They don't burn. So there's no way it could have burnt in a fire. None of these buildings. Even the so-called ones built with wood. The wood is so old, once you've got 1,000-year-old wood, it becomes like stone. It does not burn easily. So again, when they say burnt in a fire, well, that's just a story. But so we don't have any real idea about the actual age and who built these. We have to be suspicious of the stories we're told. And I'll leave a link below to another channel, My Lunch Break, that talks about this building and other buildings in great detail, and he goes into analysing the stories and how these stories look completely fake. So there may be some truth, maybe not, it doesn't matter to me, but the truth is the geometry is perfect, and the engineering required to get this perfect geometry is very, very difficult, and you're moving very heavy objects around with absolute precision. So whoever and whenever this was built, it was built by very clever people, and we have seriously underestimated them. So if this was built in 1860 or so, when they say, we have underestimated those guys. They are very clever engineers, and they had more technology than we think. So I wonder how they got this stuff up the hill. It's not a horse and cart, but they could have got it up with airships. They would have had balloons, hot air balloons. You could have floated these things up, and they had this flying technology for a long time. Hot air balloons, blimps, and again, it's been wiped out of history. But again, you've got to do some research and see it. And there you can also see the lightning conductor. But now you see the sculptures on the top. These again are very important, and again they're to do with perfection of geometry. It's not just artwork. Oh, we make some beautiful people. No, it's proportionality. Someone has got to do the analysis of those sculptures, and again, these little designs, faces and animals. The proportionality of these faces, these bodies, will be exact, and they will be to do with the golden ratio. Natural geometry in perfection. And this is what I call the human codex. When you create these sculptures of the human body in perfection, it resonates with the actual human body. There's a resonance effect, and it's very healing. It's very good for us. When you have a sculpture of a person that is ugly, out of balance, again it resonates with us. That does not do us so much good. The perfection is the thing that does us good. And again, very hard to wrap your head around this. And here, even the light, you can see the perfection and geometry, the golden ratio, these circles, these curves, and the numerology. Again, you will see numerology, which is again metaphysical mathematics. And you can see this perfect circle at the top here. These pillars and these archways look like they come straight from ancient Greece or ancient Rome. And they look like the same age. So some of this building I think is very old, and I'm not sure how old it could be. But once you understand the principle of what is going on, the most important thing is this was built by much cleverer people than we imagine. We have seriously underestimated what this building is and what it can do. It's a powerful healing temple built with electrostatics, magnetism and ether. The metaphysical energy. There you can see a little face again. It's perfect. The proportionality of that face will be to do with the golden ratio. So like I said, you will see this geometry on the small scale and the big scale all over the place. And the layers of complexity to calculate and design the geometry of this building is phenomenal. And it is done without computers, which means someone very clever has drawn very elaborate designs for this. And very interestingly, we don't have any of the plans for these buildings. If you try and research and find original drawings, original records of the building of this, how it was built, who built it, how much materials, you can't find them. Can't find them. I mean, maybe in the Vatican, in the underground, you've got 40 miles of secret historic documents. Maybe in there you might find something. But these documents are not available to us. And if you research it, you'll find there's never any complete explanation or history as to how this was done. Just stories and a few little drawings, but no real plans. The mathematics, if you do the recalculation of this, map it all out, you will see how difficult the geometry is. Extremely difficult, and this would have to be planned down to the millimeter before it was built. The entire thing must be planned to the millimeter, if not the micron. Again, it will only know if you do the measurements how exact this building is. All of them. They're not just even the simple ones. They're not simple. The relative proportionality is perfect. And that is the secret of Aether technology. Perfect geometry. You've got to get it exactly right. So thank you so much for listening. I hope this made sense. Please do check out my channel, in particular my Ether Physics series, and I look forward to seeing you in any of these other videos here.